All right, and good morning. Still with the weird angle. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that, but we're going to try to figure something out. I've got oh, actually, you know what? I just figured it out.
Huh.
I'm not going to do it right now, but tomorrow should be a better camera angle.
Okay.
It'll be there instead of there. So, how you doing?
I'm fantastic. It's almost like we came off a long holiday weekend. Is that what happened? That's what happened.
Hey, I was here yesterday.
I was here yesterday.
You were, weren't you?
That doesn't mean it wasn't a long holiday weekend.
It was. And holiday, yeah, I was working. So, what are we talking about this morning, brother?
Tax the churches?
Yeah, apparently it's trending on Twitter. They're on Twitter talking about taxing the churches. And honestly, I've read down this Twitter thread pretty far. I suspect that someone said something in some interview somewhere, and oh hey, this is fun. Apparently we are right at the tippy top of the of the trending hashtags. You know what? I'm comfortable with that. That's hi.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to the Twitters in a moment. You know what though? I am going to shamelessly live on the air, like my own feed and share that shit too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's just go ahead and start looking at it. Catastrophe, aren't you adorable? Infinite Realms. Okay. 3 followers. I was done with church when our pastor bragged about the $100 flower arrangement that he bought with donations. Wow. Okay, so the people, these complainants are people who, well, they're bad at math and they think everything should be free because, well, they're pro-slavery and they don't understand that labor is an expense. I mean, tax the church is trending, I would imagine, because the ruling class would be delighted to undermine and destroy every institution that functions independently of their largesse and control. Hey, you know what?
Yeah, I'll buy that for $1.
Welcome to the party there, Club des Cordeliers. Let's just go ahead and let you know that we're doing the thing here. Why don't you pop in here and say hello? Especially corporate churches that work/run specifically for profit only and hide behind the name church not to pay taxes. Steve says I misspelled infanticide in the thumbnail. In this one? Did I? Did I even use the word infanticide in this thumbnail? Whatever. 55 of the biggest companies paid 0 in federal income taxes last year. It's just plain wrong. We're going to change that and use the money we collect to cut taxes for middle-class families, make it easier to raise kids and take care of your aging parents, and so much more.
You could just cut taxes. It's not necessary. It's not a zero-sum game. And in the modern era, we've talked about this before, how it's not a Republican president that was the first one to observe this. It was actually a Democrat president. It was JFK.
Yep.
I forget the exact quote, but he said it was the strange and paradoxical truth that cutting tax rates now increase tax revenues later. It's just a fact. It is what it is. If you flatten out the margins and widen the base, you collect more tax revenue.
And that's what Trump did. And guess what happened?
Collected more tax revenue.
Booming economy. Biden came into office. Okay, so this 55 biggest companies pay 0 federal income tax last year. This is being said by the guy who, no shit, in less than 30 days took us from oil independence to a near 300% increase in domestic oil costs, in domestic fuel costs. This is the guy that came in and said, I know how to money's better than Donald Trump, stupid orange man bad. Watch, I'm gonna monies all over this place, and oh, look at that. Everything costs more. As my cigarettes have gone up $20 a carton since Biden was elected.
Hey, look, pal. Look, pal. I'll beat you in a push-up contest.
You know, funny story? No. Let me be very clear. If you make under $400,000, you won't pay a penny more in taxes. Bullshit. Bullshit. Okay, so let's say he manages to increase the taxes on every company in America. How does that affect you?
It raises prices.
It'll raise all the prices in America. It is hard truth. It is impossible to tax a corporation. A corporation, a business, an entity, the only entity that is physically or metaphysically capable of paying tax is the individual end consumer. The price of the goods is reflective of the cost of their production. You cannot tax anything except for an end user consumer. It is at the exact end where the product or service is consumed and depleted that the tax is paid if you're going to have taxes. The correct answer is to stop taxing. No tax is a good thing. And there's nothing that the government can do that is not done better, cheaper, and more efficiently than a private competitor. Now, let me be clear. I do not mean to say that there's nothing that the government does which could not be done cheaper, better, and more efficiently by a private competitor if there were a private competitor doing it. No. There is not a single thing which is done by government, including the construction of laws, which is not done by a private competitor, cheaper, more efficiently, and more competitively. There is not a good reason for there to be a government. It's kind of like the unions. When the unions, when we first ended up with the unions, there was value there. There was something that they could do. The earliest. Trey says I need to start. Yeah, I tried vaping. It didn't work out for me. That's a whole long thing. I actually got into it like hardcore for a hot minute, and now I can't vape anymore.
I miss my vape.
Oh yeah, hey Steve, if you could take a peek in that laundry basket or the gun safe.
Yeah. Look, stop.
We need the vape.
Stop. Yeah. Excuse me.
Anyway.
Well, I mean, I understand your point. The unions served a function when they were first created. But, there's the whole concept of the monopoly on violence. And who's the private organization that you trust to have the monopoly on violence?
How would a private organization have the monopoly on violence?
That's the point, though.
See, it's not a concern. You can't have a private organization that monopolizes violence.
Well, who's allowed to do the violence? That's one of the things that the government is allowed to do. The government is allowed to do the violence.
Why is the government allowed to do the violence?
Because it has the monopoly on violence. That's the compromise that we make. Here's the civilization. It needs a method for redressing grievances, and it needs the ability to enact violence to redress those grievances. So if we give the government the monopoly on violence, everyone else is not allowed to do violence, and we have a less violent, more civilized society.
Except we don't give the government the monopoly on violence. We give the government the monopoly on the right to initiate force.
Which, in both form and function, is almost identical?
No. If they had the absolute monopoly on violence, self-defense would not be a viable affirmative defense in a court of law in the case that you have to use violence.
Yeah, but the government's the one that defines self-defense. It might come from English common law, and it might come from understood practices that have existed for centuries, but it's the government that says it passes the final test and says that was self-defense or that was not self-defense.
No, it is a jury of your peers that makes that determination.
Yeah, and who assembles the jury of your peers? That's part of our governmental system.
The government exists in that capacity only to organize the assemblage of the jury of your peers. Jury nullification is absolutely a thing. When we talked about this the other day, there was that woman in New Hampshire, walked into a police station. I mean, walked in, and in front of the security cameras and witnesses, approached an officer and stabbed him to death. Apparently there was some history there. The officer had done her some great personal injury, and
one would think.
And the jury just said not guilty. I'm not saying they're... Steve says jury nullification needs to become a much bigger thing. We need to have a conversation about that offline too. And that might be a very big thing. But yeah, that was a case of obvious, probable jury nullification, although there's no way to be certain. That looks like a case where the jury decided, no, we're just not going to let this woman be taken. That's a big part of the concept of the government being for, of, and by the people.
Yes. But it's so rare that actually happens that to count on that, if you were to have something go wrong in your life and you were to count on the jury to read between the lines and say, okay, just because you're technically guilty of this crime does not mean that the spirit of the law says you should go to prison for the rest of your life. I wouldn't bank on that if I were you. I wouldn't.
Okay, granted, but the argument you're making is that the government has the monopoly on the use of force rather than the use of violence. Because that's what I said, is the monopoly has the government has the monopoly on the initiation of the use of force. And that is not the case. It has the monopoly on violence, theoretically, only to the extent that it has the monopoly on the initiation of the use of force. We still have self-defense, we still have the defense of others, we still have the defense of the home. We still have the use of violence for the purposes of hunting.
Yeah, but even in cases where of self-defense, you're not violating the NAP. You're only
Correct.
Defending yourself.
But you're still using force.
But you're not initiating it.
That's correct. You're not initiating force, and that's what the government has the monopoly on the initiation of force. But then you argued that the government determines what that force is, and that's not the case. The people determine that. That's what a jury does.
No, a jury interprets things on a case-by-case basis. The government is the one who wrote the laws, the government is the one who enforces the laws, and theoretically the government is the one who penalizes you for breaking the laws. The jury nullification is a small portion of that process that very rarely comes into play.
Okay, we're way the hell off the church attacks
Yeah,
topic.
we are.
We can come back to how you're wrong about this later. On the churches. Taxing the churches. Drew is unclear about something.
My bad.
Drew, I'm deeply unclear about what you're unclear about.
We can just go ahead and blame me. I'm the one.
Let's move on to why we don't tax churches. Actually, okay. If I had my way, there would be no taxation at all. Short of that, no taxation on anything other than the individual. Short of that, if we're going to have exemptions for groups by definition, then a church is absolutely as worthy of a tax exemption as any other nonprofit. The arguments that are being made by these leftists on Twitter is that because churches get involved in politics, then they shouldn't be exempt from taxes. They should have to pay to play the game. So, funny story about organizations generally. Let me hit taxes on this first. If you want less of something, you tax it. If you want more of something, you subsidize it. That's why Democrats are constantly demanding that we tax the rich, tax the churches, and subsidize the poor. You know, Bloomberg may have been an asshole, but he was actually onto something when he suggested we tax the poor.
Wasn't it Ben Franklin who said that the most moral thing you can do for the impoverished is to make their life extremely uncomfortable so they're incentivized to do whatever it takes to lift themselves out of poverty? Again, I don't remember the exact quote. When you read a lot and you got a lot of things stuffed in here, sometimes you remember the flavor, if not the exact...
Yeah. But yeah, one of the things that causes... So, America has been on a downhill slope as a result of LBJ since LBJ. The war on poverty, just like the war on drugs,
and the war on terror,
the war on terror has only served to exacerbate those problems. Krista says Obamacare was a tax on the poor. There's some merit to that statement, but it was a much more insidious thing than that. In Nigeria, Drew, are you for Biden or Trump? Okay, Drew, this isn't complicated. Donald Trump is objectively the most successful executive officer this country has ever elected to the highest office. Joseph Biden is objectively, right? I'm speaking on the merits, on the numbers, the worst president we've had. I used to quibble a bit. For who's the worst president. Was it Woodrow Wilson,
Jimmy
LBJ,
Carter,
or Barack Obama? And
Carter.
No, Carter was not. Carter doesn't have a claim to the worst president throne. Carter is the least effective president we've ever had.
Okay, all right.
Wilson, Johnson, or Obama. And here's where it gets difficult. Here's why that's a difficult question to answer. Obama and Obamacare and everything that Obama did was far more damaging than the Great Society or than the travesties of Woodrow Wilson. However, nothing Obama did would have been possible without first the implementation of LBJ's Great Society and the establishment of the massive welfare state, which has cost this country nearly $30 trillion since its inception and has lowered our poverty rate by negative margins. We have a larger problem with poverty than at the inception of the war on poverty, to the cost of our national debt in the same period. If it were not for the LBJ war on poverty, we would not have a national debt currently. That's hard numbers, that's objective fact. And then Woodrow Wilson, of course, oversaw the implementation of the IRS and the establishment of the income tax, without which LBJ's travesties would not have been possible. So we have badness, worseness, and worseness, but each significant trip down the road of absolute disaster was only enabled by its previous disaster. Then you come to Joseph Robinette Biden, who followed a president that ended a recession, saw this country with the lowest unemployment rates in history, even as divided across economic strata and demographic delineations. Ended the activities of ISIS through the justifiable use of force with extreme prejudice, slashed regulations, causing this country to see one of the largest, fastest, and most successful booms in its economic history, followed immediately by a president who managed to undo that and then make the situation worse than it was before all the good work had been done by Trump in less than one full, not term, one full year. In less than 6 months, Joseph Biden has caused more harm to this country than any of the worst presidents before him. He is an abortion, a disaster. If Katrina had gone from coast to coast, the width of the nation, she could not have done the damage that this fucking psychopath has done in less than half a year.
There's your F-bomb.
So no, there is no question. Joseph Robinette Biden is the worst abortion ever foisted on this poor nation.
You know, one of the things that's really funny about this whole tax the church thing, if you'll allow me just for a moment to discuss Papa Sheepdog who passed during my vacation period. It's part of why I had the vacation. As you all know, he was a police officer. He was personally offended by body cameras. He foresaw a day where what would happen is, as soon as there was a problem with the body camera, the officer would automatically be called into question, no matter what the circumstances behind the malfunction of the body camera was. However, he consoled himself with the fact that the body cameras were going to have a two-sided effect. And that was that a lot of the very same people that would claim police brutality and that the cops are dickheads, this officer was rude to me, that's why I lost my temper, whatever. The body cameras were going to prove that to be a false narrative. In his estimation, 90% of the time. You were going to have cops that were going to walk up and try and talk to somebody, and it was actually going to be the citizen that acted like the asshole and was begging to get arrested. Well, there's a really similar thing that's going to happen if you tax churches. It's going to have some serious blowback, and it's going to fall along Democrat and racial lines. Please believe that it is a culture in the black community to go to your black church, and as part of your 3.5-hour service at your black church, you discuss going to the polls and voting because it's an important part of your civic duty. And do you think they tell you to go vote for Republicans?
No, and they don't tell you which party to vote for. They tell you which candidate.
That is exactly right, and it's almost always
they're very explicit on that.
And it's almost always black Democrats that they tell you to go vote for. So if we want to walk this road and we want to say that churches are engaging in political speech, so they must be taxed, well, I can tell you now, the churches that it's going to hurt the most are the people that the most need church in their life and in the lives of their children. So, okay, guys, you know, I don't think this is a good idea, but if you insist, I can tell you where you start. And it's not with a church that a guy like me would go to. It's not.
No, so let's... Funny thing about churches. Part of the requirement to qualify as a church for the purposes of tax-exempt status is you are supposed to be a non-political organization. You're not supposed to preach politics. And churches, by and large, have not until just the last several years. Now, the black churches have long broken that rule. That's been a big problem, and that's one of the reasons that you see so many black political activists with the honorific reverend before their name, is they just blur that line. They don't care. Sean Stryker says LBJ made the 501c3 to screw over churches promoting conservative biblical values. Something that has happened, Mom and Dad, I don't mean to air no dirty laundry, but there's a church that my folks have attended, and I attended with them for some time. And I mean, they've attended this church they had for 30 years. Even when we lived out of town, even when we lived in New England or wherever, anytime we were back here in Georgia to visit, we would make a point to go to this church. And just a few years ago, they got a new, and they've always had a relatively liberal pastor, or preacher, but they got one a couple of years ago that was just over the top. Like they would do the prayers for where they name everybody, and the new preacher would refuse to even pray for the president. Not just refuse to name Donald Trump as the president in the prayers, but refuse to even pray for the president. Started preaching a lot of leftism and a lot of that crap. Lefties, just like all of our other institutions, the left has begun to infect our churches, and that's not by accident. That's an intentional attack.
The culture war.
Yes, that the left is. You familiar with the adage, the first lie the the greatest lie the devil ever told was convincing man that he doesn't exist?
Of course.
That's the culture war right there. They will sit here and tell you, oh no, there's no such thing. Oh, we're not taking over everywhere. Really? Because, I mean, I saw it when the gay choir, the San Francisco Gay Men's Choir, sang "We're coming for your children," and I mean, how else am I supposed to take that?
As other than a threat.
Not
just a threat, but a big old fuck you right in your face. Ha ha! Not only am I insulting you, I'm laughing at you as I do it.
Stryker mentions Harry Reid, Mitt Romney. I'm not sure exactly what what context you mean to mention the pair of them in, other than they're cancers.
From Nevada. You don't get elected in Nevada without some share of the Mormon vote. Maybe that's what he's referring to.
Romney's in Utah.
Oh. I need more coffee.
Which is Mormon-y. I've been there.
It's a little Mormon-y?
Yeah, they roll up the sidewalks at 3:30.
Anyhow. I need more coffee. I made a mistake.
Oh, shit. Maul says it was not just our parish. The national church dropped praying for the president during the prayers for the people. That is... and Sean, don't get too worried. Don't feel too surprised about the liberals infesting Mormonism. Mormons are basically just the Taliban that look like us.
You know, what's funny is...
I found it very, very difficult to vote for Romney.
A few years ago, I went to a black church just because I was in an area where I hadn't been to church in some time, so I just got in the car and drove that way, and the first church I passed by, I pulled into, and it was a black church. And it was actually a lot of fun. It was long. Every single song was 12 and a half minutes long, but it was long. But I can say this, when it came time where they prayed, and they prayed for everybody, like they prayed for President Donald Trump by name. They prayed for Vice President Mike Pence by name. So, and I'm just going to guess, based on the environment that I was in, most of these people didn't vote for Donald Trump. And yet, when it came time to actually pray, they prayed very specifically. Please, Donald Trump and Mike Pence, it was something to the effect of, please give them your wisdom, help them maintain peace in the world, help them, express your justice on the world. Like, it was very clear.
Sorry. Steve asks, do the Taliban have magic underpants? No, but they do have Velcro mittens.
But yeah, so, and then the other thing is...
It's a sheep joke.
The other thing about taxing the churches is, as I was going through my divorce, and I was first... excuse me, as I was first moving into my apartment and things like that, I was broke, because being a man in the family court system here in the United States very much puts to lie the notion that we live in a patriarchy. And it was local churches that I would go get food bank food from. And I mean, I went from having almost nothing to having a freezer full and a pantry full of food. Some of it even pretty good food. And that came from churches. And I've seen churches do just about everything that can be done as far as helping people with everything from drugs to weight loss. Like Alcoholics Anonymous, for example, one of the most successful programs for helping people get off drink and drugs. Part of the reason why that program works so well is one of the main tenets of it is they teach the people that go, let God control your life. Admit you have a problem and surrender your problem to a higher power. Without churches and without the concept that undergirds a church, you don't have the opportunity for that type of healing. That is why the left wants to replace it with communism, because communism and God are not compatible. They are oil and water. You cannot worship the state if you worship a power that is higher than the state. So, put that in your peace pipe and smoke it.
Yeah, I think that's a good note to end on, because it's the time. So thanks for watching this morning, guys. We will see you tomorrow. It's that one.